You buried it. The words were not a question. They were an accusation, cold and precise, cutting through the silence of the throne room like a blade through silk. Nora felt her knees weaken, felt the stone floor beneath her seem to shift and tilt, as if the earth itself wanted to swallow her whole. King Matthias Blackthorne stood before her, impossibly tall, impossibly still, holding the necklace she had sworn no one would ever find. The silver chain dangled from his fingers, catching the firelight, and the crescent moon pendant spun slowly, hypnotically, as if mocking every prayer she had whispered into the dirt 5 years ago when she buried it beneath the old oak tree. I asked you a question, Omega. His voice dropped lower, and Nora felt it vibrate through her chest, felt it rattle against her ribs like a living thing trying to claw its way inside her. She could not look at him. She could not lift her eyes past the dark leather of his boots, past the hem of his black coat, that seemed to absorb all light and warmth from the room. Yes. The word scraped out of her throat, raw and broken. Yes, I buried it. The admission felt like stepping off a cliff, like that terrible moment between falling and hitting the ground when you know the impact will destroy you, but you are still, impossibly, alive. The Alpha King moved closer. Nora heard each footstep, measured and deliberate, and her wolf whimpered somewhere deep inside her chest, where it had been sleeping for so long she had almost forgotten it existed. Almost. She had spent 5 years being invisible, 5 years scrubbing floors and peeling vegetables in the palace kitchens, 5 years keeping her head down and her scent suppressed and her past buried so deep she sometimes believed her own lies. But now he was close enough that she could smell him, cedarwood and smoke, and something wild and ancient that made her wolf stir restlessly. Look at me. It was not a request. Nora forced her eyes upward, past the broad chest and strong jaw, past the cruel mouth that never smiled, until she met his gaze. His eyes were amber, the color of honey held up to firelight, the color of danger and power and things that could burn you alive if you got too close. For a moment, something flickered in those eyes, something that looked almost like recognition, almost like pain. Then it was gone, replaced by the icy control that everyone in the 5 kingdoms feared. Do you know what this is? He held the necklace higher, and Nora saw her mother's blood still stained into the clasp, dark and permanent, a memorial to a death she had been too young to prevent or understand. It is a necklace. Her voice came out steadier than she expected, and she clung to that small victory even as her heart hammered against her ribs hard enough to bruise. It belonged to my mother. Matthias Blackthorne studied her face with an intensity that felt like being dissected, like he could see through skin and bone into the terrified girl beneath. Your mother. He repeated the words slowly, tasting them, testing them. And who was your mother, Omega? What was her name? Nora opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The question she had been running from for 5 years, the question that had chased her through nightmares and waking hours alike, the question she could not answer without destroying everything. I do not know. The lie felt like acid on her tongue. She died when I was 3. I barely remember her. The king's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath the skin, and Nora knew he did not believe her. Of course he did not believe her. Alpha Kings did not survive by accepting convenient lies, and Matthias Blackthorne had not united 5 warring packs under his rule by being naive or merciful. Guards found this buried 3 feet deep beneath the eastern oak, he said, his voice taking on a dangerous quiet that was somehow worse than shouting. The tree that marks the border of what used to be Moon. Blessed territory before the massacre. Before every man, woman, and child of that bloodline was slaughtered 20 years ago. He paused, letting the words sink into her skin like poison. Every single one. Or so we believed. Nora felt the blood drain from her face. She felt the room tilt again, felt her vision narrow to a pinpoint focused on the necklace spinning between them, the crescent moon catching light and throwing it back like accusations. "I am no one," she whispered. "I am just a kitchen omega. I do not know anything about moon-blessed or massacres or bloodlines. I found that necklace in the market 5 years ago, and I buried it because it frightened me. That is all." The story came out smooth and practiced because she had rehearsed it 1,000 times in the dark, had perfected every pause and inflection for a moment exactly like this. But as she spoke, she watched something change in the king's face. His nostrils flared slightly, and she realized with horror that he was scenting her, that he was using his alpha senses to taste the fear and desperation rolling off her in waves. And something else. Something that made his eyes narrow and his hand clench around the necklace until his knuckles went white. "You are lying." The words fell between them like stones into still water, sending ripples through everything. "And I am going to find out why." Before Nora could move, before she could think or breathe or run, the king reached out and caught her wrist. His fingers were warm, impossibly warm, and the moment his skin touched hers, she felt it. The bond. The mate bond that should not exist, could not exist, between an alpha king and a kitchen omega. The recognition slammed through her with the force of a physical blow, and she saw the same shock reflected in his amber eyes. His grip tightened, not painful, but inescapable, and Nora felt her wolf rise to the surface for the first time in years, felt it reach toward him with a longing that terrified her, more than any threat or accusation. No. The word ripped out of Matthias Blackthorne like it was being torn from somewhere deep and primal. He released her wrist as if her skin had burned him, stepped back with a violence that sent his coat swirling around his legs. That is not possible. But it was possible. It was happening. Nora could feel the bond singing between them, could feel her wolf crying out for him even as her mind screamed at her to run, to disappear, to do whatever it took to escape this nightmare. "I need to go." She barely recognized her own voice, thin and desperate. "Please, Your Majesty, I need to return to the kitchens. I have work. I cannot." "You cannot leave." He cut her off, and the alpha command in his voice dropped her to her knees before she could stop herself. She knelt there on the cold stone, trembling, hating herself for the automatic submission, hating him for using his power against her. "You will remain in the palace under guard until I determine what you are and what threat you pose to this kingdom." Threat. The word echoed in her skull. She was no threat to anyone. She had spent 5 years being invisible, 5 years being nothing, specifically so she would never be a threat. "I am no one," she said again. And this time she heard the plea beneath the words. "Please, Your Majesty, I am no one." Matthias Blackthorne looked down at her, and for a moment his expression softened into something that might have been regret or might have been exhaustion. Then the mask of the ruthless king slid back into place. "If that were true," he said quietly, "then my wolf would not be calling you mate. And this necklace would not bear the royal seal of the moon-blessed queens." He turned away, the necklace still clutched in his fist, and gestured to the guards who had been standing silent witness to her unraveling. "Take her to the North Tower. Post guards at her door. No one enters or leaves without my explicit permission." As strong hands closed around her arms and lifted her to her feet, as she was led from the throne room toward an uncertain fate, Nora caught one last glimpse of the king. He stood alone before his throne, staring at the necklace in his hand, and the expression on his face was not triumph or anger. It was something far more complicated, something that looked almost like hope. The North Tower room was not a cell, but it was not freedom either. Nora stood at the narrow window watching the sun set over the palace grounds, watching the shadows lengthen and swallow the gardens where she had buried her past, and any hope of a peaceful future. The room was small, but well appointed, with a proper bed and a fireplace, and even a small desk with paper and ink, as if she were an honored guest rather than a prisoner awaiting judgment. But the guards outside her door were very real, and the lock that had clicked shut behind her was solid iron. She had no illusions about what came next. King Matthias would investigate her. He would dig through every story she had ever told, would question everyone who had ever known her, would eventually discover that Nora Winters, the kitchen Omega, had appeared at Silver Creek Pack 5 years ago, with no history and no family, and nothing but a desperate story about running from an abusive mate. That story had been enough then, when she was young and terrified and clearly broken. No one questioned an Omega fleeing violence. But now the king himself was questioning everything, and the truth was a noose tightening around her neck with every passing hour. She touched her wrist where he had grabbed her, where his skin had met hers, and the mate bond had flared to life between them like lightning striking dry timber. Even now she could feel it humming beneath her skin, a connection she did not want and could not afford. Matthias Blackthorne was engaged to Lady Cassandra Nightshade, a brilliant political match that would unite the Nightshade and Blackthorne territories and cement his power across the kingdom. The wedding was planned for the next full moon, barely 3 weeks away. The entire court was already preparing for the celebration. And now Nora had appeared like a ghost from his past, tied to a bloodline everyone believed extinct, carrying a mate bond that threatened to destroy carefully laid plans and political alliances. She should have run years ago, should have taken the necklace and disappeared into the human territories where no pack law could reach her. But she had been so tired of running, so desperate for somewhere to belong, even if that belonging meant scrubbing floors and keeping her head down and pretending to be someone she was not. A knock at the door made her spin around, her heart leaping into her throat. But it was not the king. A young servant girl entered carrying a tray of food, her eyes downcast, her movements quick and nervous. "His Majesty sent dinner, miss." The girl set the tray on the desk without meeting Nora's eyes. "He says you are to eat and rest. He will speak with you again in the morning." "Wait." Nora caught the girl's arm as she turned to leave. "Please, what are people saying? About me?" The servant girl bit her lip, clearly torn between discretion and gossip. "They are saying you might be moon-blessed," she whispered finally. "They are saying the king found proof. Lady Cassandra is furious. She has been in his study for hours." Of course she had. Cassandra Nightshade was not a woman who accepted threats to her position gracefully. Nora had seen her around the palace, all ice and elegance and barely concealed ambition. She ruled the court with a combination of charm and calculated cruelty, and everyone knew she had been grooming herself to be queen since childhood. The discovery of a potential mate bond between the king and a kitchen Omega would be more than an inconvenience. It would be a declaration of war. "Thank you." Nora released the girl's arm and watched her hurry out, the lock clicking shut once more. She stared at the food on the tray without appetite, her mind racing through possibilities and finding nothing but dead ends. If she denied everything, if she insisted she was just an Omega who found a necklace, would Matthias believe her? And even if he did, would he let her go knowing what they both felt when they touched? The mate bond was sacred law among wolves. To deny it was to deny the moon goddess herself. She did not sleep that night. She sat at the window, watching stars wheel overhead, watching the moon rise full and silver over the mountains, feeling her wolf stir and pace inside her chest. It had been dormant so long, suppressed by her fear and determination to hide, but now it was waking. Now it sensed its mate nearby, and it wanted out, wanted to run to him, wanted to complete the bond that fate had decided for them. "No," Nora whispered into the darkness. "We cannot. He will destroy us." But her wolf did not care about danger or politics or the massacre that had stolen her family. Her wolf only knew that its mate was close, that the other half of its soul was separated by walls and guards and circumstances, and that was a pain worse than any physical wound. When dawn came pale and cold through the window, Nora heard footsteps in the corridor. Heavy footsteps, measured and deliberate. She knew who it was before the lock turned, before the door swung open to reveal King Matthias Blackthorn standing on the threshold. He looked like he had not slept either. His dark hair was disheveled, his jaw shadowed with stubble, his amber eyes bloodshot and haunted. He held the necklace in his hand still, like he had been carrying it all night, like he could not bear to let it go. "I need the truth." His voice was rough, scraped raw by exhaustion or emotion or both. All of it. No more lies. Nora stood, wrapping her arms around herself as if she could hold her secrets inside by physical force alone. "I told you the truth. I found the necklace. I buried it. That is all I know." Matthias stepped into the room, and the guards pulled the door closed behind him, leaving them alone. The space suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker, charged with tension, and the mate bond that neither of them could ignore. "Do not insult my intelligence." He moved closer, and Nora forced herself not to retreat, not to show the fear that was making her hands shake. "I have spent the night reviewing records, questioning the few survivors who remember. The Moon-Blessed Massacre. This necklace is not something you find in a market. It is the royal seal, passed from mother to daughter through the Moon-Blessed line for 300 years. The last person to wear it was Queen Ariana Moon-Blessed, who died in the massacre 20 years ago." He paused, his eyes boring into hers. "She had a daughter, 3 years old. The girl was never found. Everyone assumed she died with her mother, that her body was simply lost in the chaos." Nora felt tears sting her eyes and blinked them back furiously. She would not cry. She would not give him that. "Maybe someone took it from the queen's body," she said, but her voice wavered. "Maybe it has been passed around for years. Maybe you're sent." Matthias cut through her desperate theories with 2 words. "It is on the necklace. Old, faded, but unmistakable. You have been wearing this since you were a child, and you took it off 5 years ago when you came to this palace, and buried it to hide what you are." He took another step closer, and now they were close enough that Nora could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell the cedarwood and smoke that made her wolf keen with longing. "You are moon-blessed, the last of your line, the rightful heir to the Eastern Territories." "No." The word came out broken. "I am no one. I do not want territories or titles or any of this. I just want to survive. Please." The plea slipped out before she could stop it. "Please, Your Majesty. Let me go. Forget you found the necklace. Marry Lady Cassandra and unite your kingdoms, and I will disappear. I am good at disappearing. You will never see me again." Something flashed across Matthias's face, something that looked like pain. "I cannot do that." "Why?" Nora's voice rose, desperation cracking through her careful control. "Why does it matter? The Moon-Blessed are gone. That bloodline ended 20 years ago. Let it stay dead. Because you are my mate." The words fell between them like a bomb exploding in slow motion. "Because the moment I touched you, I felt it. And I know you felt it too. Because the mate bond is sacred law, and to deny it would make me no better than the monsters who slaughtered your family." His voice dropped to something almost tender, almost vulnerable. "And because I have spent 20 years trying to atone for what happened to the moon, blessed, and I will not let the last survivor of that massacre disappear into nothing because acknowledging her existence is inconvenient." Nora stared at him, seeing him clearly for the first time, seeing past the cruel king reputation to the man beneath, the man who carried guilt like a physical weight, who looked at her with something that might have been hope if hope were not so dangerous. "You were there," she whispered. "During the massacre. You saw what happened." Matthias's jaw tightened. I was 16. My father was fighting to unite the packs under his rule, and he saw the moon blessed as a threat to his power. Their magic was too strong, their influence too great. So he orchestrated their destruction and called it collateral damage of war. He looked away, staring at something Nora could not see, something in the past that still haunted him. I tried to stop it. I was just a boy, but I tried. I got to your mother's chambers too late. She was already dying, but she made me promise to protect you if you were still alive, to keep the moon-blessed legacy safe. I searched for weeks, but I never found you. Eventually, I convinced myself you must have died too. The pain in his voice was real. Nora could feel it through the mate bond, could feel the years of guilt and grief he had carried. But sympathy was a luxury she could not afford. So, this is about your guilt, she said flatly. About redemption. I am not a person to you. I am a way to make yourself feel better about the past. No. The word came out sharp and fierce. Matthias closed the remaining distance between them and caught her, face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. You are my mate. You are the woman my wolf has been searching for my entire life. The moon-blessed legacy is important, and the truth about the massacre needs to be revealed, but that is not why I cannot let you go. His thumbs brushed over her cheekbones, gentle despite his intensity. I cannot let you go because losing you would destroy me. The mate bond flared between them at his touch, stronger than before, nearly overwhelming. Nora felt her wolf surge up, felt it crying, yes, 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 even as her mind screamed warnings about danger and politics and the impossibility of this situation. You are engaged, she managed. In 3 weeks you marry Cassandra Nightshade. I will break the engagement. The certainty in his voice sent chills down her spine. The mate bond supersedes all other commitments. It is moon law. She will not accept that. The Nightshade pack will not accept that. You are talking about starting a war. Nora tried to pull away, but his hands held her steady, kept her anchored when she wanted to flee. And what about me? I never asked to be moon-blessed. I never wanted this legacy or this power, or any of the responsibility that comes with it. I just wanted to be left alone. I know. Matthias's voice softened. I know you are frightened. I know you have spent years hiding, years surviving, and now I am asking you to step into danger and claim a birthright you never wanted. But you are the last moon-blessed. Nora, the magic in your blood is awakening whether you want it to or not. I can feel it building inside you, can see it in your eyes. If you do not learn to control it, if you do not accept what you are, it will consume you. His words hit too close to truth. Nora had been feeling it for weeks now, the restless energy beneath her skin, the way shadows seemed to move when she walked past, the dreams of running through moonlit forests with silver light trailing from her fingertips. She had been ignoring it, suppressing it, but she could not suppress it forever. What if I am not strong enough? The question came out small and scared, and she hated herself for the vulnerability. What if I claim this legacy and I fail? What if I cannot control the power, or lead the people, or be what everyone needs me to be? Then I will be there to catch you. Matthias leaned down until his forehead rested against hers, until they were breathing the same air. I will teach you to control your power. I will protect you from those who would use or destroy you, and I will stand beside you when you reclaim what was stolen from your family. His eyes searched hers, earnest and intense. But you have to trust me. You have to stop running. If you are enjoying this story, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. Trust. The word felt foreign on her tongue, impossible and terrifying, and maybe the only option she had left. Nora closed her eyes, felt the mate bond humming between them, felt her wolf settling into a contentment it had never known before. When she opened her eyes again, Matthias was still there, still waiting, still offering her a future that seemed like madness. "If I do this," she said slowly, "if I agree to accept my heritage and let you break your engagement and face whatever consequences come, you have to promise me something. Anything. You have to help me find out who really ordered the massacre." Nora's voice hardened. "My mother told me things before she died, things I did not understand when I was 3, but that I have remembered all these years. She said it was not just your father who wanted the Moon-Blessed destroyed. She said there was a traitor, someone close to the Moon-Blessed court who betrayed us from within. Someone who is still alive." Matthias went very still. "Are you certain?" "I remember her words exactly. She said trust no one with ancient blood. She said the traitor wears 2 faces. She said they would come for me if they knew I survived." Nora met his eyes steadily. "If I am going to step out of the shadows and claim my birthright, I need to know who to fear. I need to know who wanted my family dead and why." The king was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful and troubled. "If there is a traitor with ancient blood still living, someone who has hidden their involvement for 20 years, exposing them will be dangerous. They will do anything to protect their secret. I know." Nora straightened her shoulders, feeling something settle inside her, some decision made. "But I am tired of being afraid. I am tired of hiding who I am because of what someone else did to my family. If you are asking me to be moon-blessed, to claim that legacy and that power, then I am going to do it right. I am going to finish what they started 20 years ago when they tried to destroy us. I am going to find justice for my mother." Matthias studied her face, and then, slowly, deliberately, he smiled. It transformed his severe features, made him look younger and less burdened, and Nora felt her breath catch at the beauty of it. "There she is," he murmured. "There is the moon-blessed queen I have been waiting for." He released her face, but caught her hand instead, threading his fingers through hers. "Very well. We will find your mother's killer together. But first, you need to learn to control your power, and I need to break an engagement and deal with the political fallout. Are you ready for what comes next?" Nora looked down at their joined hands, at the way his large, calloused palm engulfed her smaller one, at the rightness of it, despite everything telling her this was impossible. "No," she admitted, "but I will do it anyway." The next 3 days passed in a whirlwind of revelation and preparation that left Nora's head spinning. Matthias moved her from the tower to a suite of rooms in the royal wing, rooms that had once belonged to visiting dignitaries and now were hers alone. He assigned her a personal guard, a stern woman named Helena, who had served in his father's army and now watched Nora with sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. And he began teaching her about her power, about the magic that flowed through moon-blessed blood. They met in a private training room deep beneath the palace, a space warded against observation where Nora could practice without fear of being seen. Matthias brought books, old texts written in the flowing script of the moon-blessed language that Nora could somehow read despite never learning it. He brought artifacts, objects that had belonged to her mother and grandmother and great-grandmother, each one humming with residual magic that called to something in Nora's blood. "Moon-blessed power is different from normal wolf magic," Matthias explained, as they stood in the center of the warded room, moonlight filtering through a high window to puddle silver on the stone floor. "It is older, more primal. Your ancestors could call moonlight itself, could weave it into shields and weapons and healing. They could speak to wolves across vast distances, could sense lies and truth, could see possible futures in moon pools." He gestured for her to stand in the moonlight. "The power is tied to the lunar cycle. It will be strongest during the full moon and weakest during the new moon. Right now we are 3 days past full, so you should have significant strength available." Nora Oneng stepped into the silver light and gasped as power flooded through her. It felt like lightning in her veins, like ice and fire and electricity all at once. The shadows in the room leaped and danced, responding to her presence, and she felt her wolf surge to the surface with a joy that was almost painful. "I can feel it," she breathed. "I can feel everything." "Good." Matthias circled her slowly, watching with intense focus. "Now reach for it. Imagine the moonlight is a thread you can grasp, a tangible thing you can shape and mold. Do not force it. Moon-blessed magic responds to will and intention, not strength." Nora closed her eyes and reached inside herself for the power she could feel waiting there. It came to her easily, almost eagerly, as if it had been sleeping all these years and was thrilled to finally wake. She felt it gather in her palms, felt it cool and silver and potent. When she opened her eyes, she was holding light. Actual moonlight, condensed and glowing, floating. Between her hands like a small sun made of silver instead of gold. Matthias made a sound that might have been surprise or approval. "Impressive. Most moon-blessed need weeks of training to manifest their power physically. You did it on your first try." "It feels natural," Nora admitted, staring at the light in wonder. "Like breathing. Like it was always supposed to be there and I just did not know how to access it." She experimented, willing the light to change shape, watching it flow and reshape according to her thoughts. Within minutes, she had created a sphere, then a blade, then a delicate flower that glowed softly in her palm. "Your mother would be proud." Matthias's voice was gentle. She was the most powerful moon-blessed of her generation. They said she could call down the moon itself if she chose, could blanket entire battlefields in healing light or destructive force, depending on what was needed. That is why my father feared her. Not because of territory or politics, but because her power made her untouchable. Nora let the moonlight dissipate, feeling suddenly exhausted as the power drained back into the well inside her. "Tell me about the massacre. I need to know what happened that night." Matthias was quiet for a long moment, his expression distant and troubled. "My father sent his best warriors to the moon-blessed stronghold under the guise of a diplomatic visit. Your mother welcomed them because the Pax had been at peace for months, because she believed the treaties would hold. But it was a trap. At midnight, when the full moon was highest, my father's men attacked." His voice went flat, emotionless, the only way he could tell the story. "They killed everyone they could find, used silver and fire because those are the only things that can truly kill a moon-blessed. The stronghold burned for 3 days. By the time I arrived with reinforcements, there was nothing left but ash and bodies." "How did I survive?" Nora asked, though she already knew part of the answer. "Your mother." Matthias met her eyes. "When I found her, she was barely alive, but she had hidden you somewhere with magic. She would not tell me where, would not risk my father discovering your location if he questioned me. She just made me promise to protect you if you appeared, and then she died." He paused. "I found her necklace in the rubble weeks later. I kept it all these years, hoping someday I would find you and return it. I never imagined I would find you working in my own palace kitchens." Nora touched her chest where the necklace now hung, Matthias having returned it to her the day before. The weight of it felt right, felt like reclaiming a piece of herself she had lost. "Someone must have taken me away before the attack started," she said slowly. "Someone who knew what was coming. That is the only explanation, which supports your mother's claim about a traitor." Matthias began pacing, his tactical mind clearly working through possibilities. Someone with inside knowledge of moon-blessed defenses. Someone your mother trusted enough to have access to you. Someone who could have spirited you away without being questioned. "And someone who has spent 20 years believing I was dead," Nora added. "If they discover I am alive, I become a threat to whatever they gained from the massacre. Which is why we need to be careful about revealing your identity." Matthias stopped pacing and turned to her. The court does not know yet who you really are. They know I found something significant, know I have moved you to the royal wing, but I have not made any official announcements. That gives us time to investigate without alerting the traitor to your survival. But you still need to break your engagement to Cassandra. Nora felt her stomach tighten at the thought. She will demand explanations. The court will demand explanations. How do you plan to handle that? Matthias's expression went grim. I am meeting with Cassandra tonight to end the engagement. It will not be pleasant, but the mate bond gives me unassailable grounds. Even the Nightshade Pack cannot argue with Moon Law. She will hate me. She already hates you. His lips quirked in something that was not quite a smile. Cassandra is many things, but she is not stupid. The moment I moved you from the tower to the royal wing, she understood what you mean to me. Right now she is trying to find leverage, some way to force me to honor our agreement despite the mate bond. She will fail, but she will make the attempt. And what about the wedding? Nora asked. It is supposed to happen in less than 3 weeks. There must be preparations, guests traveling from all over the kingdom, political alliances depending on the union, all of which I will handle. Matthias crossed to her and took her hands, his touch sending warmth through the lingering chill of the moonlight magic. I know this seems impossible. Know you are being thrown into a situation you never asked for. But I need you to trust that I can manage the political fallout. My concern is keeping you safe and helping you master your power before anyone discovers who you really are. Nora wanted to believe him, wanted to trust in his confidence and certainty. But she had spent too many years alone, too many years knowing she could rely only on herself. What if your kingdom will not accept me? She asked quietly. What if they see me as a threat rather than an asset? The Moon-Blessed were destroyed. Because they were feared. What makes you think your people will welcome their last survivor? Because you are my mate. Matthias said it with absolute conviction. Because I am the Alpha King, and my word is law. And because once they see what you can do, once they understand the power and honor you carry, they will recognize you as the queen you were born to be. Queen. The word made Nora's breath catch. I am not ready to be anyone's queen. You do not have to be ready today. You just have to be willing to try. He squeezed her hands gently. One step at a time, Nora. First, we master your power. Then we deal with Cassandra. Then we start looking for your mother's killer. We do not have to solve everything at once. It was sensible advice, logical and measured. But Nora could not shake the feeling that time was running out, that forces were already moving in the shadows, that her survival had set something in motion that could not be stopped. That night, as she lay in her new chambers, staring at the ceiling, she heard it, a whisper in her mind, soft and insistent, speaking in a language she should not know but somehow understood perfectly. Moonchild, you who carry the last light, they are coming for you. They have always been coming. Trust no one with ancient blood. Trust no one who smiles with cold eyes. The truth lies in shadows, and the traitor wears 2 faces. Nora sat up, her heart pounding. The voice was not her wolf. It was something else, something that felt like memory or prophecy or warning from beyond the grave. Her mother's voice, perhaps, or the collective consciousness of all the moon-blessed who had come before her. She got out of bed and moved to the window, looking out over the palace grounds. Everything seemed peaceful. Moonlight silvered the gardens and courtyards. Guards moved on their regular patrols. Nothing seemed amiss. But Nora could feel it now, a tension in the air like the moment before lightning strikes. Something was coming. Someone was watching, and her emergence from the shadows had just painted a target on her back that she could not remove. What do you think will happen next? Leave your predictions in the comments below. The next morning, Nora woke to find Helena standing at the foot of her bed, the guard's face grim and urgent. Lady Cassandra has requested an audience with you, Helena said without preamble. The king said the choice is yours, but he advises against it. Nora sat up, pulling the blankets around herself. Did she say what she wants? No. But she has been in the throne room since dawn, and she has the entire Nightshade delegation with her. Helena's tone made it clear what she thought of that development. This is a power play. She wants to intimidate you, wants to make you feel small and frightened so you will remove yourself as an obstacle to her marriage. Then we should not give her the satisfaction. Nora surprised herself with the steadiness of her voice. Tell Lady Cassandra I will meet with her in 1 hour, and inform His Majesty of the meeting so he can attend if he wishes. Helena's eyebrows rose slightly, respect flickering in her expression. As you command, my lady. The title felt strange, but Nora did not correct it. If she was going to do this, if she was going to step into the role Matthias and fate had thrust upon her, she needed to start acting like someone worth respecting. She dressed carefully in one of the gowns that had been provided for her. A depot. Blue silk that brought out the silver undertones in her eyes. She wore the moon-blessed necklace prominently, letting it catch the light. If Cassandra wanted a confrontation, Nora would give her one. But she would do it looking like she belonged here, like she had every right to wear royal colors and meet with the king's former fiancé as an equal. When she entered the throne room an hour later, with Helena at her back and her chin held high, the effect was immediate. Cassandra Nightshade stood. In the center of the room, surrounded by a dozen men and women in the black and silver colors of her pack. She was beautiful in the way of ice sculptures, all sharp angles and perfect features and cold calculation. Her blonde hair was swept up in an elaborate style that emphasized her long neck, and her dress was stunning, a creation of white silk and diamonds that must have cost a fortune. She looked every inch a queen. She looked like someone who belonged on a throne. And when her ice-blue eyes landed on Nora, the hatred in them was pure and undisguised. So this is the little kitchen rat who thinks she can steal a king. Cassandra's voice was cultured, aristocratic, dripping with disdain. How charming. Nora felt the barb hit home, felt the old insecurity rise up to choke her. But she pushed it down, forced herself to remember the moonlight in her hands, the power singing in her blood, the legacy she carried. She was not a kitchen rat. She was moon-blessed. She was the daughter of queens. Lady Cassandra. Nora inclined her head politely, refusing to be baited. You requested this meeting. How may I assist you? The cool response seemed to surprise Cassandra, who had clearly expected fear or deference. She recovered quickly, her smile sharpening into something cruel. I wanted to see you for myself. Wanted to understand what could possibly make the Alpha King forget his duty, forget his kingdom, forget the alliances that keep his people safe. She took a step closer, and Nora felt the weight of her alpha presence pressing down like a physical force. I wanted to know what makes you special enough to destroy everything I have worked toward for 10 years. I did not ask for any of this. Nora kept her voice steady despite the pressure. I did not seek out the king, or manipulate the mate bond, or try to interfere with your engagement. Fate made that choice, not me. Fate. Cassandra laughed, and the sound was like breaking glass. How convenient to blame fate when you are benefiting from it. Tell me, rat, did fate also guide you to bury a royal artifact? Did fate teach you to hide your true nature while working in the palace kitchens? Or was that just strategy? The accusation hung in the air, dangerous and barbed. Nora felt the Nightshade delegation watching her with predatory interest, felt them judging and measuring and finding her wanting. I buried the necklace to survive, Nora said quietly. I was a child when the moon-blessed were massacred. I was alone and frightened, and I knew that revealing my heritage would only get me killed. So I hid. I survived. I am not going to apologize for that. Moon-blessed. Cassandra practically spat the words. You dare claim that bloodline? You dare stand here wearing that necklace as if you have any right to it? She moved closer still, and now they were only a few feet apart, close enough that Nora could see the fury and fear warring in her eyes. The moon blessed are dead. That power is gone. Whatever you think you are, whatever you think you can offer the king, it is nothing compared to the real alliance I represent. I am Nightshade nobility. I command armies. I bring wealth and territory and connections that span the 5 kingdoms. What do you bring? Memories of a dead bloodline and a convenient mate bond? The door to the throne room opened before Nora could respond, and King Matthias entered with a presence that filled the space like thunder rolling across mountains. He took in the scene. With one sweep of his amber eyes, his expression darkening when he saw how close Cassandra stood to Nora, how aggressive her posture was. That is enough. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority, the alpha command that could drop wolves to their knees. You will step away from her, Cassandra. Now. Cassandra turned to face him, and her beautiful face twisted with betrayal and rage. How can you do this? How can you throw away everything we planned, everything we built together for some Omega pretending to be special? She is not pretending. Matthias crossed to stand beside Nora, and his proximity made the mate bond flare to life between them, visible to everyone in the room as a shimmer of silver light. She is moon-blessed, the last of that bloodline, and she is my mate. Those 2 facts make her not only special, but essential. Our engagement is over, Cassandra. I am sorry, but that is the reality we must all accept. No. The word came out raw and broken. Cassandra stood frozen, staring at Matthias like she could not quite believe what she was hearing. No, you do not get to do this. We have an agreement, a contract signed by both our packs. You cannot just walk away because you felt a mate bond with some random Omega. The mate bond supersedes all contracts. Matthias's voice gentled slightly, showing compassion even as he delivered the final blow. You know this. It is moon law, sacred and unbreakable. I did not choose this, did not plan it, but I cannot deny what fate has given me. I will honor our alliance in other ways, will ensure the Nightshade Pack loses nothing by this change, but I cannot marry you. Not when my mate stands before me. Cassandra looked between them, her chest heaving, tears gathering in her eyes, though her pride would not let them fall. I have given you 10 years, she whispered. 10 years of my life preparing to be your queen, and you are throwing it away for her? She pointed at Nora with a trembling hand. For some girl who does not even know who she is, who has been hiding in your kitchens like a coward while I was building alliances and managing your court. I am sorry. Matthias said it with sincerity, and Nora could feel his genuine regret through the mate bond. I truly am. You would have made an excellent queen, but you are not my mate. She is, and I cannot change that any more than I can change the phases of the moon. The silence that followed was devastating. Nora watched emotions flash across Cassandra's face. Grief, fury, humiliation, calculation, each one there and gone in seconds as she processed the destruction of her carefully laid plans. When Cassandra finally spoke again, her voice was cold and controlled, all emotion locked away behind perfect aristocratic composure. Very well. If this is your choice, then I will respect it. But understand, Your Majesty, that the Nightshade Pack will not forget this insult. You have made an enemy today, and we have long memories. She turned to her delegation. We are leaving. There is nothing for us here anymore. As the Nightshade group swept toward the door, Cassandra paused beside Nora. She leaned in close enough that only Nora could hear her whisper. If you think you have won, little rat, you are even more naive than I thought. There are things happening in this palace that you cannot begin to understand. Secrets that will destroy you if you are not careful. Watch your back, and watch who you trust. Not everyone wants the moon blessed to return. Then she was gone, her delegation flowing out behind her like a dark tide, leaving Nora standing in the throne room with her heart pounding, and Cassandra's warning echoing in her mind. Matthias touched her elbow gently. "Are you all right?" Nora nodded, not trusting her voice. She kept thinking about what Cassandra had said, about secrets and danger, and not everyone wanting the moon blessed to return. It could have been empty threats, the bitter words of a woman whose future had just been ripped away. But something in Cassandra's eyes had looked almost like genuine warning, like she knew something Nora needed to know. "She is angry," Matthias said, misreading her silence. "But she will accept it eventually. The Nightshade Pack is pragmatic. They will find another alliance, another way to strengthen their position. This is politics, and politicians always adapt. It is not just politics to her." Nora finally found her voice. "She loved you. Or at least she loved the idea of being your queen. We just destroyed her life's work in front of her entire delegation. She will not forgive that easily." "I know." Matthias's expression was troubled. "But what would you have me do? Deny the mate bond? Marry her anyway and keep you hidden like some shameful secret? That is not how I operate, Nora. When I commit to something, to someone, I do it completely. And I am committed to you." The conviction in his voice made Nora's throat tighten. She barely knew this man, had spoken to him only a handful of times, yet he was willing to blow up his carefully planned future for her. It should have felt romantic. Instead, it felt terrifying. "I need air," she said abruptly. "I need to get out of this room." Matthias nodded and guided her toward a side door that led to a private garden. It was a small space, enclosed by high stone walls, with a fountain at the center, and flowering vines creeping up the walls. The morning sun was warm on her face, and Nora breathed deeply, trying to settle the turmoil inside her. "This is happening too fast," she admitted. 4 days ago, I was just a kitchen omega trying to stay invisible. Now I am moon-blessed royalty with a mate bond to the Alpha King and enemies I did not even know I had. How am I supposed to process this? How am I supposed to be what everyone needs me to be when I can barely keep up with what is happening? Matthias was quiet for a moment. Then he sat on the edge of the fountain and gestured for her to join him. When she did, he took her hand, threading their fingers together. "When I became Alpha King at 19 after my father died, I felt exactly the same way. I was too young, too inexperienced, and I had inherited a kingdom built on blood and fear. Everyone expected me to be just like my father, expected me to rule with an iron fist and crush anyone who opposed me. But I did not want that. I wanted to build something better, something my father's victims could respect, rather than fear." He looked at her intently. "So I did it one day at a time, one decision at a time. I stopped trying to see the whole overwhelming picture and focused on what I could control right now, in this moment. That is how you survive impossible situations. You break them into manageable pieces." Nora squeezed his hand, drawing comfort from the contact. "What is the manageable piece right now? Right now, you focus on training your power. Let me handle the politics, the court intrigue, the fallout from Cassandra. You work on becoming strong enough to defend yourself, on learning what it means to be moon-blessed. Everything else will wait." It was good advice, practical. But Nora could not shake the feeling that time was not on their side, that something was already moving in the shadows that would not wait for her to be ready. "Tell me about ancient blood," she said suddenly. "My mother's warning. She said the traitor has ancient blood. What does that mean?" Matthias frowned. Ancient blood refers to the original pack lines, the bloodlines that can be traced back to the first wolves who walked this land. There are only a handful of families who can claim true ancient blood. The moon-blessed were one. The Blackthorns are another. The Nightshades, despite Cassandra's relatively recent rise to power, can trace their line back 600 years. He paused. If your mother was right about a traitor with ancient blood, it narrows our suspects significantly. But it also makes the investigation more dangerous. Families with ancient blood have power, influence, and resources most people cannot touch. If you want to see how this story ends, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. Nora felt a chill run down her spine. How many families are we talking about? In the 5 kingdoms? Perhaps a dozen with legitimate claims, but only 5 or 6 with enough power and proximity to have been involved in the Moon-Blessed massacre. Matthias began ticking them, off on his fingers. Blackthorn, Nightshade, Silverfang, Ironwood, Moonstone, and Ravenwood. Each family has held territory for centuries. Each has their own agenda and secrets. So one of those 6 families betrayed my mother and orchestrated the massacre. Nora tried to wrap her mind around it. And they have been living free for 20 years, believing they succeeded. Which means they will panic when they learn you survived. Matthias's expression was grim. We need to move carefully. Need to gather evidence before we make any accusations. Accusing an ancient blood family without proof could tear the kingdom apart. They sat in silence for a while, the fountain burbling peacefully beside them, the sun climbing higher in the sky. Nora found herself studying Matthias's profile, the strong jaw and straight nose, the way his dark hair fell across his forehead. He was handsome in a severe way, but more than that, he radiated competence and control. It was comforting and intimidating in equal measure. Why did your father really want the Moon-Blessed destroyed? She asked softly. You said he feared their power, but was that all? Or was there something else? Matthias was quiet for so long, Nora thought he might not answer. Then he sighed, a sound filled with old pain. My father was a tyrant. He believed might made right. That strength was the only currency that mattered. The Moon-Blessed represented everything he hated. Power that came from magic rather than physical. Dominance, leadership based on wisdom rather than fear. A female monarchy in a world he thought should be ruled by alpha males. His jaw tightened. But there was something specific, too. He wanted the Moon-Blessed healing pools. Your people controlled 3 sacred sites, where moonlight gathered in water with healing properties so potent they could cure almost any injury or illness. My father wanted those sites for himself, wanted to control who could access healing, and use it as leverage over the other packs. So he murdered an entire bloodline for 3 pools of water? Nora felt sick. That is monstrous. Yes, it was. Matthias met her eyes. My father was many terrible things, and his greatest crime was not the massacre itself, but the fact that he felt no remorse afterward. He celebrated it as a strategic victory, as one less rival to his power. That is when I started planning to take his throne. I knew I could not let him rule any longer, could not let his cruelty define what it meant to be Alpha King. What happened to him? Nora realized she had never asked how Matthias became king, had simply assumed his father died of natural causes. Matthias's expression went carefully blank. He was killed in a hunting accident when I was 19, a tragic arrow to the chest during a boar hunt. Very unfortunate. The way he said it, the precise tone and careful phrasing, made Nora understand. You killed him. It was not a question. I challenged him according to pack law. But my father would never have accepted a legitimate challenge because he knew he was getting old, knew his strength was fading. So yes, I arranged the hunting accident. I killed my own father to take his throne and stop the violence he was spreading. Matthias looked at her steadily, waiting for judgment or horror. Does that change how you see me? Knowing I am capable of patricide? Nora considered the question seriously. Part of her was shocked, disturbed by the casual admission of murder. But another part, the part that carried 20 years of grief and loss, understood the desperate necessity of stopping a monster. "Did you have another choice?" she asked. "Could you have stopped him any other way?" "No. He would have killed me first if he suspected I was plotting against him. And he would have continued destroying packs and families in his quest for total dominance. The Moon-Blessed were not his only victims, just his most famous ones." Matthias ran a hand through his hair, suddenly looking exhausted. "I do not regret killing him, but I carry the weight of it every day. It is one of the reasons I need to find your mother's killer, need to bring justice for the massacre. I can never erase what my father did, but I can try to make amends." Nora shifted closer to him on the fountain's edge. "You are not responsible for your father's crimes. You were a child when the massacre happened. You could not have stopped it. I know. Logically, I know that. But it does not make the guilt any easier to carry." He looked at their joined hands. "You understand, though, do not you? You carry your own guilt for surviving when everyone else died. It is not rational, not justified, but it is there regardless." He was right. Nora did carry that guilt, had carried it for 20 years like a stone in her chest. The irrational conviction that she should have died with her mother, that her survival was somehow a betrayal of everyone who did not make it. "Maybe we can help each other," she said quietly. "Maybe we can learn to live with the past while working to make the future better." Matthias smiled, and again, Nora was struck by how it transformed his features. "I would like that." He stood and pulled her to her feet. "Come. We should continue your training. The more control you have over your power, the safer you will be when the truth about your identity becomes public." They spent the rest of the day in the warded training room, Matthias guiding Nora through exercises designed to strengthen her connection to moon-blessed magic. She learned to call moonlight even during the day, learned to weave it into barriers and projectiles, learned to sense the lunar energy flowing through the earth beneath her feet. It was exhausting and exhilarating in equal measure, and by the time evening came, Nora was drenched in sweat and trembling with fatigue. "You are a remarkably fast learner," Matthias observed as they climbed the stairs back toward the main palace. "Most Moon-Blessed needed months to reach the level you have achieved in days. Maybe it is because I have been suppressing it for so long." Nora wiped sweat from her forehead. "Like a dam breaking. All that power has been building up inside me for 20 years. They emerged into a corridor, just as one of the palace stewards came running up, his face pale and frightened. "Your Majesty, there has been an incident. You need to come quickly." Matthias's expression hardened. "What kind of incident?" "Lady Helena was attacked in the North Wing. She is alive but badly injured. The healers are with her now." Ice flooded Nora's veins. Helena, her guard, the woman who had been protecting her for days. Where was she when it happened? "Outside your chambers, my lady. She was standing guard while you trained. Someone ambushed her from behind." The steward swallowed nervously. "They left a message carved into the wall beside her. It says, 'The Moon-Blessed should stay dead.'" Nora felt the world tilt. This was not random. This was not coincidence. Someone knew who she was. Someone knew she was Moon-Blessed. And they had just declared war. Matthias grabbed her arm, his grip tight enough to bruise. "We are going to your chambers. Stay close to me and do not touch anything." They ran through the palace corridors, guards falling in around them, until they reached the North Wing, where Nora's rooms were located. Helena lay on the floor in a pool of blood, healers working frantically over her unconscious form. And there on the wall, carved deep into the stone with something sharp and silver, were the words the steward had described. The Moon-Blessed should stay dead. But that was not all. Beneath those words was a symbol, ancient and unmistakable. A crescent moon pierced by a sword. The mark of the Moonstone family, one of the 6 ancient bloodlines Matthias had named. "No," Matthias breathed. "It cannot be them." But the evidence was literally carved into his palace walls. Someone from the Moonstone family had just tried to kill Helena as a warning to Nora. Someone with ancient blood, just as her mother had predicted. The traitor had revealed themselves, and the hunt had officially begun. Nora stood frozen, staring at the symbol carved into the stone, feeling her world narrow to that single point of focus. The Moonstone family. Ancient blood. The mark left deliberately, arrogantly, as if daring someone to act on the information. Why would they reveal themselves? Like this? She asked, her voice sounding distant to her own ears. It makes no sense. If they wanted me dead, why not just kill me? Why leave evidence? Matthias was already issuing orders to the guards surrounding them, his voice clipped and precise. Lock down the palace. No one enters or leaves without my explicit permission. I want every member of the Moonstone delegation questioned and accounted for. And I want a full security detail on Lady Nora at all times. He turned to her, his amber eyes fierce. This is a message, but not the one you think. This is someone telling us they are powerful enough to strike at the heart of my palace and arrogant enough to mark their work. They are not afraid of being discovered because they believe they are untouchable. The Moonstones have been your allies for years, one of the senior guards pointed out. Lord Damien Moonstone himself attended your coronation. His daughter Lyanna serves on your council. Surely you do not believe they would betray you this openly? I do not know what to believe yet. Matthias's jaw was tight with barely contained rage. But someone used their symbol, which means either the Moonstones are responsible or someone is trying to frame them. Either way, we investigate thoroughly before we make accusations. He looked down at Helena, who the healers were now carefully moving onto a stretcher. How bad is she? The head healer, an elderly woman named Mira, shook her head grimly. Silver poisoning. Deep. Cuts laced with silver dust. She will survive, but her wolf may be permanently damaged. Whoever did this knew exactly where to cut, exactly how much silver to use to cripple without killing immediately. Silver poisoning was a death sentence for most wolves, but Helena's military training and exceptional strength must have kept her alive long enough for help to arrive. Still, a wolf whose inner beast was damaged could never fully heal, never completely trust their instincts, or access their full strength. It was a fate some considered worse than death. Find who did this, Nora said softly, but there was steel beneath her quiet tone. Find them, and make them answer for what they have done to Helena. She was only hurt because she was protecting me. This is my fault. No. Matthias caught her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. This is the fault of whoever wielded that blade. Do not take their guilt onto yourself. Helena knew the risks when she accepted the position as your guard. She chose to protect you, and she would be furious if you dishonored her choice by claiming responsibility for someone else's violence. He was right, but it did not make the guilt any lighter. Nora pulled away and walked to the wall, studying the carved symbol more closely. The crescent moon was rendered in perfect detail, every curve precise, the sword piercing through its center positioned with artistic skill. Whoever had carved this was no amateur. This was done slowly, she murmured. Not in a rush. Look at the depth and consistency of the lines. Someone stood here for minutes, possibly longer, carefully creating this symbol while Helena bled out beside them. She looked back at Matthias. They wanted us to see their work, wanted us to appreciate the craft of it. Matthias moved to stand beside her, examining the carving with a critical eye. You are right. This was not a heat-of-the-moment decision. This was planned, executed with precision, which means the attack on Helena was never meant to kill. It was meant to deliver a message. What message? Nora turned to face him. That the Moon Blessed should stay dead? We already knew someone wanted that. Why reveal themselves now, after successfully hiding for 20 years? Because you stopped hiding. The answer came from the doorway. Nora spun to see a woman standing there, tall and elegant, with silver-streaked black hair and eyes the exact color of moonstone, pale gray with hints of iridescent blue. She wore the formal robes of the Moonstone family, and her presence carried the weight of ancient power. "Lady Lyanna?" Matthias acknowledged her with a slight nod, though his body remained tense, ready for threat. "This is not a good time." "I imagine not, considering someone has carved my family's symbol into your palace walls as part of a threat." Lyanna Moonstone moved into the room with fluid grace, her gaze sweeping over the scene before landing on Nora. "You must be the girl everyone is whispering about, the one who has thrown the court into chaos." "I am Nora." She lifted her chin, refusing to be intimidated even as she felt the power radiating from this woman. "Ancient blood," her mother's voice whispered in her memory. "Trust no one with ancient blood. I did not ask for any of this chaos. Few of us ask for the roles fate assigns." Lyanna's expression was unreadable. "But we play them regardless. I heard rumors that you might be moon-blessed. Looking at you now, I see those. Rumors are true. You have the eyes. That particular shade of silver is unique to that bloodline. And your family's symbol is carved into my wall beside a warning that my bloodline should stay dead." Nora kept her voice even, despite the fear coiling in her stomach. "Forgive me if I am not inclined to trust anything you say right now, Lady Lyanna." The older woman's lips quirked in something that might have been respect, or might have been amusement. "Fair enough, but consider this. If I wanted you dead, you would be dead. I am one of the most powerful magic users in the 5 kingdoms, second only to what the Moon-Blessed could achieve at their height. If I had attacked your guard, she would not have survived long enough for healers to arrive, and I certainly would not have left my family's symbol as evidence." She gestured at the wall dismissively. "This is amateur hour. Someone trying to frame the Moonstones, or someone pretending to be Moonstone who lacks the skill to properly replicate our work." "How do we know you are not lying?" Matthias asked bluntly. "How do we know this is not exactly what you want us to think while you cover your tracks?" Lyanna turned her full attention to the king, and Nora felt the temperature in the room drop several degrees. "Because, Your Majesty, my family has been loyal to the Blackthorn throne for 300 years. Because my grandfather died defending your grandfather during the Western Rebellion. Because I personally trained half your royal guard in defensive magic, and I have spent the last decade helping you rebuild what your father destroyed." Her voice took on an edge. "I am many things, but I am not a traitor, and I resent the implication." "Then help us find who is." Matthias matched her intensity. "If someone is using your family's symbol, if someone is trying to frame you or simply steal your identity for their own purposes, you should want them caught as much as we do." Lyanna was silent for a long moment, her moonstone eyes distant and calculating. Then she nodded slowly. "Very well. I will conduct my own investigation within the Moonstone delegation. If one of my people has gone rogue, I will find them. And if this is an outsider using our symbol, I will help you identify them." She looked at Nora again, and this time there was something almost like sadness in her expression. "The Moon-Blessed and the Moonstones were allies once, you know. Before the massacre. Our families shared magic theory and research, worked together to strengthen the lunar connection all wolves carry. My mother was devastated when your people were destroyed. She spent years trying to find survivors, trying to preserve what knowledge she could of their traditions. If your family was such good friends with the Moon-Blessed, where were you when they needed help?" The question came out harsher than Nora intended, but she did not take it back. "Where were the Moonstones when my family was being slaughtered?" Pain flashed across Lyanna's face. "We did not know until it was too late. By the time word reached us, the stronghold had already fallen, and the survivors scattered. My mother searched for years, but she never found anyone. She died believing the entire Moon-Blessed line was extinct. Leanna took a step closer, and Nora forced herself not to retreat. If you are truly the last of that bloodline, then I owe you a debt my family has carried for 20 years. The Moonstones failed to protect our allies when it mattered most. That failure haunts us still. The sincerity in her voice was difficult to dismiss. Nora wanted to believe everyone was an enemy, wanted to paint the world in simple blacks and whites where she knew who to trust and who to fear. But Leanna Moonstone was complicated, and complexity made everything harder. I need time to think, Nora said finally. This is all too much, too fast. I cannot sort through accusations and alliances and political maneuvering when someone just tried to kill my guard and left a death threat carved into stone. She looked at Matthias. Can we continue this later? Please? He nodded immediately. Of course. Lady Leanna, I trust you will begin your investigation. If you discover anything relevant, report directly to me. No intermediaries, no delays. Understood, Your Majesty. Leanna bowed formally, her gaze lingering on Nora for a moment longer. For what it is worth, I am glad you survived. The world is diminished by the loss of the blessed. Perhaps your return will restore some balance. Then she swept from the room, leaving a wake of unanswered questions and uncomfortable truths behind her. Matthias turned to Nora, concern evident in every line of his body. You need to rest. Come. I will take you to my personal quarters where I can guarantee your safety. What about my things? Nora gestured vaguely at her chambers beyond the doorway. Everything I have is in there. I will have servants pack your belongings under. Heavy guard, and move everything to my wing. You are not setting foot in these rooms again until we know exactly what happened here and who is responsible. He offered his arm. Come. You look ready to collapse, and we still need to discuss our next steps. Nora let him guide her through the palace, too tired and overwhelmed to argue. The king's personal quarters were in the highest tower, a sprawling suite of rooms that managed to be both luxurious and comfortable. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the entire kingdom spread out below, and thick carpets muffled every footstep. Matthias led her to a sitting area near the fireplace and gestured for her to sit, while he poured 2 glasses of wine from a crystal decanter. Drink. He pressed a glass into her hand. It will help with the shock. Nora sipped obediently, feeling the warmth spread through her chest. I do not understand why any of this is happening. If someone wanted me dead, they have had multiple opportunities to kill me. Why play these games? Why leave symbols and warnings instead of just finishing the job? Because killing you is only part of their goal. Matthias sat beside her, close enough that she could feel his body heat but not quite touching. They want to discredit you, want to make people afraid of what your return means. If they simply murdered you quietly, you would become a martyr and people would ask questions. But if they can paint you as a threat, if they can make it seem like your survival brings danger and chaos, then your death becomes justified in people's minds. That is twisted. Nora took another drink, larger this time. Who thinks like that? People who play the long game. People who understand that power is as much about perception as it is about actual strength. Matthias studied his own glass. Whoever orchestrated the moon-blessed massacre did not just want your family dead. They wanted the entire concept of moon-blessed power erased from collective memory. They wanted people to forget what your bloodline could do, what it represented. Your survival threatens that erasure. He looked at her intently. That is why we need to be strategic. We cannot just react to threats and attacks. We need to control the narrative, need to show people that your return is something to celebrate rather than fear. How do we do that? Nora felt exhausted just thinking about it. I barely understand my own power. How am I supposed to convince an entire kingdom that I'm not a threat? By becoming the queen they need, rather than the threat they fear. Matthias set down his glass and took her hand. Starting tomorrow, We make your identity public. We hold a formal presentation to the court, where I acknowledge you as my mate and as the last moon-blessed heir. We do not hide or apologize. We claim your heritage with pride and confidence, and we dare anyone to challenge it. That is insane. Nora pulled her hand away, panic rising in her chest. I am not ready. I cannot control my power well enough, cannot navigate court politics, cannot be what you are asking me to be. You do not have to be perfect. His voice was gentle but firm. You just have to be present. You just have to show them you exist, that you are real, that you have every right to stand beside me. The rest we can build over time. Nora stood and moved to the windows, staring out at the darkening landscape. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold, and somewhere out there in that vast kingdom were people who wanted her dead. People who had murdered her family and would not hesitate to finish what they started. I am scared, she admitted quietly. I am terrified of failing, of not being strong enough, of getting people like Helena hurt or killed, because I am not prepared for this. She heard Matthias come up behind her, felt his presence like a warm wall at her back. Being scared does not mean you are weak. It means you understand the stakes, that you care about the consequences of your actions. That is what makes you different from people like my father. People who saw power as an end rather than a responsibility. His hand settled on her shoulders, gentle and grounding. I know I am asking too much too quickly. I know this is unfair and overwhelming, and you did not choose any of it. But Nora, you are the last moon blessed. That means something. Not just historically, but spiritually. Your people had magic that could heal and protect and bring light to dark places. The world needs that again. I believe you can be that. Nora closed her eyes, feeling tears threaten. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that she could become something worthy of the legacy she carried. But belief and reality were two different things, and the gap between them felt insurmountable. What if the person who carved that symbol is right? She whispered. What if the moon blessed should stay dead? What if bringing that power back into the world causes more harm than good? Then we deal with those consequences together. Matthias turned her to face him, his amber eyes intense and unwavering. But I do not believe that. I have seen what you can do with moonlight, seen the purity and beauty of your magic. That is not something to be feared. That is something to be celebrated and protected and allowed to flourish. He cupped her face in his hands. I know you are scared, but I am here. I am not going anywhere, and I will help you through this every step of the way. You do not have to be strong alone anymore. The mate bond flared between them at his words, and Nora felt her wolf rising to meet his, felt the rightness of his promise even through her fear and doubt. She had spent so many years alone, so many years trusting no one, that the idea of actually relying on someone else felt foreign and dangerous. But maybe that was the point. Maybe strength was not about doing everything yourself. Maybe it was about knowing when to accept help. Tomorrow, she said finally. We make the announcement tomorrow. But tonight I need to rest. Need to process everything that has happened. Can we just exist for a few hours without politics or threats or destiny? Matthias smiled, and it was softer than she had ever seen from him. We can do that. He guided her to a comfortable chair and built up the fire while Nora curled into the cushions and tried to quiet her racing mind. They did not talk much after that, just sat, together in companionable silence, while the sky darkened and stars began to appear. At some point, servants brought food which they picked at without much appetite. At another point, a guard knocked to report that Helena was stable and healing, that she had even regained consciousness briefly, to insist she would return to duty as soon as possible. And through it all, Nora felt the mate bond humming between her and Matthias, a connection that grew stronger with each passing hour. It should have felt invasive, this link to someone she barely knew. Instead, it felt like coming home, like finding a piece of herself she had not known was missing. Dangerous thoughts. Those. Thoughts that could get her heart broken or worse if she was not careful. When she finally fell asleep in the chair, too exhausted to make it to a proper bed, Matthias covered her with a soft blanket and took up guard himself by the door. His last thought before exhaustion claimed him too was a prayer to the moon goddess, that he could keep his promises, that he could protect this woman who had appeared in his life like a gift and a challenge combined. The morning came too quickly, and with it the reality of what they had committed to. Matthias woke before dawn and sent word throughout the palace that there would be a formal court gathering at midday. Mandatory attendance for all nobility currently in residence, all council members, all family heads with ancient blood. The announcement would be made public and official, leaving no room for doubt or speculation. Nora spent the morning being prepared by a small army of servants who treated her with a deference that felt surreal. They dressed her in a gown of deep midnight blue silk that seemed to shimmer with captured starlight. They arranged her hair in an elaborate style that was both elegant and practical, woven through with silver threads that caught the light. And they hung the moon-blessed necklace prominently at her throat, the crescent moon, pendant resting just above her heart. When Nora looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. This was not the kitchen Omega who had scrubbed floors and kept her head down. This was someone who looked like she belonged in a palace, like she could stand beside a king and not seem out of place. Beautiful. Matthias appeared in the doorway, and the appreciation in his eyes was genuine and warm. He wore formal black with silver embroidery, the colors of the eye, Blackthorn family, and he looked every inch the powerful Alpha King. "Are you ready?" "No." Nora turned away from the mirror. "But I am doing it anyway." He crossed to her and offered his arm. That is all anyone can ask. They walked through the palace together, guards falling in around them in a protective formation, until they reached the great hall where the court was assembled. The massive room was packed with nobility, council members, pack representatives, and curious onlookers who had heard rumors and wanted to see the truth for themselves. The conversations died instantly when Matthias and Nora appeared at the entrance. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who loves epic romance. Tell me in the comments, did you see this ending coming? Matthias led Nora to the raised platform at the front of the room where two thrones sat side by side. The smaller one had been empty for years, waiting for a queen who had never materialized. Now Matthias gestured for Nora to sit in it, a public claiming that sent gasps rippling through the assembled crowd. He remained standing, his presence commanding absolute attention as he addressed his court. "I have called you here today to make an announcement that will change the future of our kingdom. Some of you have heard rumors about a young woman I recently discovered working in the palace. Those rumors are true, but they do not go nearly far enough to capture the significance of who she is and what her presence means." He paused, letting the tension build. 20 years ago, the moon-blessed bloodline was believed to have been completely destroyed in a massacre orchestrated by my father. Every man, woman, and child murdered in a single night of violence. It was one of the darkest moments in our kingdom's history, a crime that has haunted us ever since. But we were wrong about one thing. One moon-blessed survived. He turned to Nora, his amber eyes fierce with pride and protection. "This is Nora Moon. Blessed, daughter of Queen Ariana Moon. Blessed, rightful heir to the moon-blessed territories and the last living member of that bloodline. She is also my fated mate, recognized by both our wolves and blessed by the moon goddess herself." The hall erupted. Some people cheered, clearly moved by the romantic drama of the revelation. Others shouted questions or objections, their voices overlapping into chaos. And a few remained perfectly silent, their expressions unreadable, and those were the ones that worried Nora most. Matthias raised his hand, An alpha command rolled through the room like thunder, forcing everyone to silence. I know this is unexpected. I know many of you had invested in different expectations for my future, but the mate bond is sacred law, and I will not dishonor it or pretend it does not exist for political convenience. Lady Cassandra and I have mutually agreed to end our engagement. The alliance with the Nightshade Pack will continue in other forms, but my future lies with my mate. He looked directly at several of the ancient blood family representatives. I also know that the return of a moon-blessed heir will make some of you uncomfortable. The power that bloodline represents, the questions it raises about the past, the changes it might bring to the present. But I'm making this clear now. Nora Moon Blessed is under my personal protection. Any threat against her is a threat against me. Any attempt to harm her will be considered an act of war. Against the Blackthorn throne. His voice dropped, taking on a dangerous edge. And I hope everyone remembers what happens to those who wage war against me. The message was received. Nora could see it in the way people shifted nervously, in the calculation that flickered across faces as they reassessed their options. She was no longer just a kitchen Omega. She was the Alpha King's mate, and the last moon-blessed heir. She had become untouchable, at least officially. But official protection and actual safety were not the same thing, as the attack on Helena had proven. Lady Nora will begin training to take her place as queen, Matthias continued. She will learn our customs and laws, will work with my council, and will eventually claim her ancestral seat on the High Court. This transition will take time, and I expect everyone to show patience and respect during the process. He looked directly at Nora then, and the warmth in his expression was just for her. I also expect everyone to recognize that she is already more than qualified to stand beside me. The grace and strength she has shown in the face of overwhelming circumstances speaks to the quality of her character and the depth of her power. We are fortunate to have her return to us. The words were pretty, political, designed to win support and neutralize opposition. But Nora heard the genuine emotion beneath them, felt through the mate bond how much Matthias meant what he said. He truly believed in her, truly wanted her to succeed. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Now, Matthias gestured to the assembled crowd. Who wishes to be the first to formally welcome the return of the Moon Blessed and acknowledge Lady Nora as my mate and your future queen? For a long moment, no one moved. The silence stretched uncomfortably as people looked at each other, waiting to see who would make the first move. Then Lady Leanna Moonstone stepped forward, her silver and black robes swirling around her as she approached the platform. She knelt before Nora with fluid grace, her head bowed in a gesture of profound respect. On behalf of the Moonstone family and in memory of the alliance that once existed between our bloodlines, I welcome your return, Lady Nora. The loss of the Moon Blessed has been a wound in the fabric of our world for 20 years. Your survival brings hope that such wounds can heal. She looked up, her moonstone eyes sincere. I pledge the resources and knowledge of my family to aid in your training and protection. Whatever you need only ask. The public pledge was powerful, and it broke the logjam. Others began to come forward, representatives from various packs and families, offering their own words of welcome and support. Not everyone was sincere, Nora could tell from the false smiles and calculated pleasantries, but enough seemed genuine that she started to believe maybe this could work. Maybe she could find a place here. Then she saw him. A man standing. At the back of the hall, not approaching, not offering welcome. Just watching with cold, assessing eyes that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. He was older, perhaps 50, with iron-gray hair and the bearing of someone used to authority. He wore the colors of the Ironwood family, another ancient bloodline, and when his gaze met hers, Nora felt a chill run through her entire body. Trust no one with ancient blood, her mother's voice whispered. She could not look away from him. Could not shake the feeling that she was staring at her enemy, even though she had no proof, no evidence beyond instinct and a dying woman's warning. Then he smiled. It was a thin, cold expression that never reached his eyes, and it felt like a knife sliding between her ribs. He inclined his head in a mockery of a bow, then turned and left the hall before the ceremony was complete. Who was that? Nora grabbed Matthias's arm as soon as there was a break in the stream of well-wishers. The man who just left. Gray hair, ironwood colors. Who is he? Matthias followed her gaze to the empty doorway, his expression darkening. That is Lord Victor Ironwood, head of his family, one of my most trusted military advisors. Why? He was watching me. Nora could not explain the depth of her unease, the way every instinct screamed danger when she looked at that man. And when I noticed him, he smiled. But it was not a welcoming smile. It was something else. Victor has always been difficult, Matthias said carefully. He supported my father's policies, believed in ruling through strength rather than diplomacy. But he has been loyal to me since I took the throne. I trust him with military strategy and border security. You should not. The words came out with absolute certainty. I do not know why. I cannot prove anything. But that man is dangerous. He looked at me like he was measuring me for a grave. Matthias studied her face, clearly torn between dismissing her fear as paranoia and trusting her instincts. I will have him watched, he said finally. Discreetly. If he is involved in something, we will discover it. But Nora, you cannot accuse someone of Lord Victor's standing without evidence. It would tear the court apart. I am not asking you to accuse him. I am asking you to be careful. Nora forced herself to look away from the doorway, to focus on the people still waiting to meet her. Please, just be careful. The rest of the presentation ceremony passed in a blur. Nora smiled and nodded and said the appropriate things, while her mind raced with possibilities and fears. That man, Lord Victor Ironwood, had looked at her like a problem to be solved, like an obstacle to be removed, and she could not shake the feeling that he was connected to the symbol carved into her wall, to Helena's attack, to the massacre that had destroyed her family 20 years ago. When it was finally over, when the last noble had offered their congratulations or thinly veiled threats, disguised as concern, Matthias escorted her back to his chambers. Nora collapsed into a chair, exhausted by the performance and the constant vigilance required to survive court politics. You did well, Matthias said, pouring her wine. Better than well. Several of the council members were impressed by your composure. Composure. Nora laughed without humor. I was terrified the entire time. That is what composure is. Being terrified and functioning anyway. He sat across from her. Now tell me more about Lord Victor. What specifically made you uneasy? Nora tried to organize her scattered thoughts. It was the way he looked at me, like he recognized me, but not from today. Like he had been expecting me. And when I caught him watching, he did not look away or try to hide it. He just smiled, like he wanted me to know he was a threat. She met Matthias's eyes. My mother said the traitor has ancient blood. Victor Ironwood has ancient blood. He was old enough to have been involved in the massacre. And he left the presentation before officially acknowledging me, which is a political insult whether he meant it that way or not. All of which is circumstantial. But Matthias looked troubled. Victor has been my military advisor for 6 years. If he is involved in something, he has hidden it remarkably well. Or you have not been looking in the right places. Nora leaned forward. The massacre happened during your father's reign, but you said someone had to have inside. Knowledge of moon-blessed defenses. What if that someone was your father's military advisor? What if Victor Ironwood helped plan the attack and has been living comfortably off the rewards ever since? Matthias went very still. If that is true, if Victor was involved, then he has access to my security details, my battle plans, my strategic thinking. He would know every vulnerability, every weakness. He would be able to orchestrate attacks without leaving obvious trails. Exactly. Nora felt vindication warring with horror. He could have been the one who attacked Helena. He could have carved that symbol to frame the moonstones because they are your other trusted magical advisors. He could be working right now to undermine me before I become powerful enough to be a real threat to whatever plans he has. We need proof. Matthias stood and began pacing. We need evidence that will hold up under scrutiny, that cannot be dismissed as paranoia or political maneuvering. If we move against Victor without proof, we risk looking like we are purging anyone who questions your legitimacy. Then we find proof. Nora stood as well. We investigate quietly, carefully. We look into Victor's history, his finances, his movements during the massacre. Someone that powerful, that connected, will have left traces somewhere. We just need to know where to look. They spent the next several hours planning their investigation, identifying people who might have information, resources they could tap without alerting their target. It was exhausting and frightening, and Nora had never felt more alive. This was what it meant to fight back. This was what it meant to honor her mother's memory and her family's legacy. Not by hiding or surviving, but by actively working to bring justice for those who had been murdered. When night fell fully and they were both too tired to continue, Matthias insisted Nora take his bed while he made himself comfortable on the sofa. She protested, but he was immovable on the subject. You need real rest, he said firmly. Tomorrow we start the investigation in earnest, and you will need all your strength. Sleep, Nora. I will keep watch. She wanted to argue more, but exhaustion was making her limbs heavy and her thoughts fuzzy. So she climbed into the massive bed, surrounded by pillows that smelled like cedarwood and smoke, and let herself sink into the first real sleep she had experienced in days. Her dreams were strange and vivid. She walked through moonlit forests, with silver light trailing from her fingertips. She stood before a great pool of water that reflected not the sky above, but something deeper, older. And she heard her mother's voice, clear as if Ariana Moon blessed stood beside her. You are stronger than you know, my star child. The power in your blood is awakening. Trust your instincts. Trust your mate. But beware the wolf who wears two faces. Victor Ironwood is not what he seems, but he is not working alone. Find the second face, and you will find the truth. Nora woke gasping, the dream so vivid it felt like prophecy. Moonlight streamed through the windows, and she realized it was past midnight, that she had slept for hours. Matthias was still on the sofa, but he was not sleeping. He stood by the window looking out over the kingdom, his expression distant and troubled. You are supposed to be resting, Nora said softly. He turned, surprise flickering across his face. I could say the same to you. It is the middle of the night. I had a dream. Nora climbed out of bed and moved to stand beside him. My mother was in it. She said Victor is not working alone, that there is a second face we need to find. Matthias looked at her intently. Do you think it was just a dream or something more? I do not know. Nora touched the necklace at her throat. But it felt real. Moonblessed are supposed to have prophetic abilities, right? The ability to see possible futures? They did. Matthias turned fully toward her. Your mother was particularly gifted in that area. Some said she could see weeks or months ahead, that she knew the massacre was coming, but could not prevent it, because the future she saw was too tangled, too many variables. If she knew, why did not she run? Why did not she take me and disappear? The question had haunted Nora for years. Because she believed her best chance of saving you was to stay and fight, to hide you using magic and sacrifice herself to give you time to escape. Matthias's voice was gentle. She saw multiple futures, Nora. In most of them, you both died. In a few she survived, but you did not. In only one you survived alone. So she chose that future, did everything necessary to make it real, even though it meant her own death. Tears stung Nora's eyes. How do you know that? Because she told me before she died. She said she had seen this moment, seen me standing before her while she bled out, and she made me swear to protect you when you appeared because that was the only future where you got to live. She knew you would come back eventually, knew you would seek answers about what happened. She just did not know when. Matthias reached out and wiped a tear from Nora's cheek. Your mother loved you more than anything. She gave her life so you could have yours. Do not waste her sacrifice by doubting your worth or your right to be here. The words broke something open in Nora's chest, some dam she had been holding against the grief and loss. She stepped forward and Matthias caught her, wrapped his arms around her while she cried for her mother, for her lost family, for the 20 years of hiding and fear and loneliness. He held her through it all, steady and strong, the mate bond between them glowing silver in the moonlight. When the tears finally subsided, Nora pulled back enough to look up at him. Thank you for telling me that, for helping me understand. Always. His hand came up to cup her face. I will always tell, Nora, even when it hurts, even when it is difficult. You deserve nothing less. They stood like that for a long moment, the moonlight painting them both in silver, the mate bond humming with intensity that made breathing difficult. Then Matthias leaned down and kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative, as if he was giving her time to pull away. But Nora did not pull away. She wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him back with all the emotion churning inside her, all the fear and hope and desperate need for connection. The kiss deepened, became something hungry and urgent. The mate bond flared between them like wildfire, demanding completion, demanding acknowledgement. Nora felt her wolf surge forward, felt it crying, yes, finally home, and she knew Matthias's wolf was responding the same way. Nora. He breathed her name against her lips. If we do this, if we complete the bond, there is no going back. You will be mine and I will be yours in every way that matters. Are you certain? Yes. She did not hesitate. I am certain. I want this. I want you. What followed was inevitable and perfect and transformative. They moved together to the bed, shedding clothes and barriers, learning each other's bodies with hands and mouths and whispered promises. When Matthias finally claimed her, when the mate bond snapped into place with the force of destiny fulfilled, Nora felt her power explode outward in a cascade of silver light that filled the room like a star-going supernova. The windows rattled. The air hummed with magic. And somewhere in the palace, Nora knew, sensitive wolves felt the pulse of moon-blessed power awakening fully for the first time in 20 years. She did not care who knew. She did not care about politics or danger or the investigation they still had to complete. In this moment, wrapped in Matthias's arms with their bond glowing between them like a living thing, Nora finally understood what it meant to belong. She was Moon. Blessed. She was mated to the Alpha King. She was home. And she was ready to fight for the future her mother had died to give her. The next morning brought consequences and revelations in equal measure. News of the completed mate bond spread through the palace like wildfire, and the reactions were predictably mixed. Some celebrated the romantic union of the Alpha King and his fated mate. Others worried about the political implications, the shift in power dynamics, the uncertainty that change always brings. But all recognized that something fundamental had shifted, that Nora was no longer an unknown quantity, but a force to be reckoned with. Lady Lyanna Moonstone arrived at breakfast with ancient texts and a knowing smile. The entire palace felt your bonding ceremony last night, she said without preamble. That level of power release has not happened in living memory. Your magic is fully awakened now. We need to begin advanced training immediately. She spread the texts across the table. These are moon-blessed journals, records of power usage and magical theory that my family preserved after the massacre. If we are going to help you master your abilities, you need to understand what you are capable of. Nora studied the elegant script, feeling something resonate deep in her chest. This was her heritage, her birthright, written down by ancestors she would never know, but who lived on through their knowledge. Thank you for preserving these, for bringing them to me. It is the least I can do. Leanna's expression was sincere. The moonstones failed to protect the moon blessed when it mattered. We will not fail again. Before Nora could respond, a guard rushed in, his face pale. Your Majesty, there has been another incident. Lord Victor Ironwood's chambers were broken into last night. His study was ransacked and several documents are missing. Matthias and Nora exchanged sharp glances. When? Matthias demanded. Sometime between midnight and dawn. The guards on duty saw nothing unusual, heard nothing suspicious. It was a professional operation. The guard hesitated. Lord Victor is demanding an audience. He believes this is connected to Lady Nora's presentation, that someone is trying to frame him or discredit him because of his concerns about the moon-blessed return. Concerns he never expressed publicly. Nora kept her voice level. Interesting that he is raising them now, after his chambers were searched. What was taken? Matthias asked the guard. We are still cataloging, but the initial assessment suggests military records from 20 years ago. Battle plans, troop movements, correspondence with the late king. The guard looked uncomfortable. Records from the time of the moon-blessed massacre. Nora felt ice flood her veins. Someone had gone after Victor's records, had stolen evidence that might prove his involvement in the massacre. Either Victor himself was destroying evidence, or someone else was protecting him, or this was all an elaborate setup to make them think he was guilty, while the real traitor operated freely. Two faces, her mother had said. Victor Ironwood is not what he seems, but he is not working alone. Tell Lord Victor I will meet with him this afternoon, Matthias said, in the throne room, with witnesses present. This conversation needs to be official and documented. When the guard left, Matthias turned to Leanna. I need you to investigate Victor Ironwood. Discreetly. Look into his background, his finances, his connections. If he was involved in the massacre, there will be traces somewhere. Already working on it. Leanna's smile was sharp. I had my suspicions about Victor before Lady Nora arrived. His reaction to her presentation confirmed them. Give me 3 days, and I will have everything you need. She gathered her texts and stood. In the meantime, Nora and I should begin training. The more powerful she becomes, the safer she will be, and the more terrified her enemies will be. Over the next few days, Nora threw herself into training with an intensity that surprised everyone. Under Leanna's guidance, she learned to call moonlight even in full day, to weave it into shields and weapons and healing light. She practiced until her body ached and her magic reserves were depleted, then pushed herself to go further. She was done being afraid, done being a target. If enemies wanted to come for her, she would meet them with the full power of her bloodline behind her. She also worked with Matthias to investigate Victor Ironwood, carefully, methodically, building a case from fragments and whispers and old records that did not quite add up. They discovered financial transfers that coincided with the massacre, correspondence with known enemies of the Moon Blessed, gaps in Victor's official timeline that he had never explained. But they still lacked the smoking gun, the undeniable proof that would justify moving against someone of his position and power. Then, on the third day, Leanna arrived at their chambers with a scroll case that practically vibrated with importance. I found it. Her eyes gleamed with triumph. The proof you needed. Victor kept records, detailed records, of his involvement in the massacre. Dates, names, payment amounts, everything. He documented his own crimes because he never believed anyone would dare investigate him. She spread the documents across the table. He was your father's accomplice in planning the attack. He provided the intelligence about moon-blessed defenses, coordinated the timing, even personally led some of the kill teams. And he was paid handsomely for it, both in gold and in territory that used to belong to the moon-blessed. Nora stared at the documents with a mixture of vindication and horror. Here it was. Proof that Victor Ironwood had helped murder her family, had profited from their deaths, had lived comfortably for 20 years while she hid and grieved. Why would he keep records? Matthias asked, echoing Nora's thoughts. Why not destroy them? Insurance. Liana pointed to several key passages. Look at the names here. Victor was not working alone. He had partners, co-conspirators from other ancient families who helped plan and execute the massacre. He kept these records to protect himself, to ensure that if he ever went down, he would take others with him. It is a mutually assured destruction pact. Who else? Nora leaned forward, heart pounding. Who else was involved? Liana's finger traced down the list. Members of the Ravenwood family, the Silverfang pack, even a few nightshades, though not Cassandra herself, she would have been too young. She paused at the bottom of the page. And someone from the Moonstone family. My family. The pain in Liana's voice was evident. My uncle, who died 5 years ago. He was part of this. He betrayed our alliance with the Moon Blessed and helped orchestrate their destruction. 2 faces, Nora's mother had said. The truth lies in shadows, and the traitor wears 2 faces. It was not just Victor. Nora straightened, understanding flooding through her. It was a conspiracy across multiple families. That is why it succeeded, why the Moon-Blessed were caught so unprepared. Their allies betrayed them from within. And Victor is just the visible face. Matthias studied the documents with a general's tactical eye. He is powerful and dangerous, but he is also exposed, known. The others have stayed hidden, letting him take the risk of being public. If we move against Victor without securing the others first, they will scatter, and we will never get them all. So what do? Nora asked. We set a trap. Matthias's smile was cold and predatory. We let Victor know we are investigating him. Let him panic and reach out to his co-conspirators. We watch those communications, identify everyone involved, and then we move against all of them simultaneously. No one escapes. No one gets to hide behind plausible deniability. Or political connections. That could take weeks. Liana looked troubled. And it is dangerous. If any of them realize what you are doing, they could strike first. They could go after Nora directly. Then we make sure Nora is untouchable. Matthias turned to Nora with fierce determination. We complete your training. Make you powerful enough that anyone who comes for you dies trying. We use you as bait, but bait with teeth sharp enough to defend itself. Nora considered the plan. Considered the risks and potential rewards. Part of her wanted to refuse, wanted to insist on staying safe while others handled the danger. But that was not who she was anymore. That was not who she wanted to be. I will do it. She met Matthias's eyes steadily. I will be the bait. I will draw them out and help you catch them all. But we do it my way, with my magic, following moon-blessed methods. If we are going to honor my family's memory, we are going to do it right. Over the following 2 weeks, they executed their plan with precision. Matthias made sure word spread through the court that he was investigating Lord Victor Ironwood for possible involvement in the Moon-Blessed massacre. Victor, as predicted, panicked and began reaching out to his co-conspirators, trying to coordinate a response. They watched and documented every communication, every meeting, every attempt to destroy evidence or manufacture alibis. Meanwhile, Nora trained harder than ever. She learned to manifest her wolf fully. For the first time, discovered that her moon-blessed blood gave her a larger, more powerful form than typical wolves. She mastered combat magic, could now fight with moonlight blades and shields that could deflect almost any attack. And she discovered the prophecy gift, learned to still her mind, and let possible futures flow through her consciousness like water. The visions were not always clear, not always useful, but they gave her an edge. Let her sense danger before it arrived. Throughout it, her bond with Matthias deepened. They were partners now in every sense, united by fate and choice, and the shared determination to bring justice for crimes too long hidden. He supported her through the grueling training, celebrated her victories, held her through the nightmares that still came sometimes when she remembered her mother's death. And she gave him hope, showed him that the future could be different from the past, that redemption was possible even for sins committed by others. The final confrontation came on the night of the new moon, when Nora's power should have been at its weakest. Victor and his co-conspirators had planned it that way, had chosen that specific night to strike, believing she would be vulnerable. They were wrong. Nora had learned in her training that moon-blessed power did not actually disappear during the new moon. It simply changed, became internal rather than external, defensive rather than aggressive. And she had spent days preparing for exactly this scenario. The attack came at midnight. 6 assassins, all enhanced with dark magic and silver weapons, breached the palace defenses and made their way to Nora's chambers. They found her waiting, standing in the center of the room with moonlight she had stored in crystals earlier glowing around her like captured stars. "Lord Victor sends his regards," one of them said, raising a silver blade. "He says the moon blessed should have stayed dead. He can tell me himself." Nora released the stored moonlight in a blinding flash that sent the assassins staggering back. Then she called her wolf and transformed, her larger, moon-blessed form rippling with silver light even in the darkness of the new moon. The fight was brief and brutal. The assassins were skilled, but they had never faced a moon-blessed warrior at full power. Nora moved like liquid silver, her moonlight blades cutting through their dark magic, her shields deflecting their silver weapons. Within minutes, all 6 were subdued, bound in chains of solidified moonlight that would hold them until the guards arrived. When Matthias burst into the room with his security detail, he found Nora standing human again, breathing hard but uninjured, surrounded by defeated attackers. "It worked," she said simply. "They came, and I was ready." The interrogation of the assassins led directly to Victor Ironwood and his co-conspirators. Faced with undeniable evidence and testimony from multiple sources, they could not deny their involvement in the massacre. The trials were swift and public, the judgments harsh but fair. Victor Ironwood was stripped of his titles and territories, exiled to the farthest reaches of the kingdom where he could never again wield power or influence. The others received similar punishments, their families disgraced, their legacies destroyed. It was not enough to bring back the moon blessed who had died, could never be enough to heal that wound completely. But it was justice. It was truth, brought to light after 20 years of darkness. And it was closure, the ability to finally let the past rest while building a new future. 3 months after the trials concluded, on the night of the full moon, Nora Moon Blessed was officially crowned Queen of the United Pax. She stood before her people, wearing the ceremonial robes of the Moon Blessed, the ancient necklace glowing at her throat, with Matthias beside her as her king and mate and partner. The ceremony was beautiful and solemn, witnessed by representatives from all 5 kingdoms, and blessed by every pack elder who could travel to attend. When Lyanna Moonstone placed the silver crown on Nora's head, when the assembled wolves howled their acceptance of their new queen, Nora felt her mother's presence like a warm hand on her shoulder. "Well done, my star child. You have honored your heritage and built something new from the ashes of what was lost. I am proud of you. Always." The voice faded, but the feeling of peace and pride remained. Nora looked out over her kingdom, over the people who had accepted her despite her rough beginning, and she knew that this was what her mother had seen in her visions. This was the future worth dying for. This was why Ariana Moonblessed had sacrificed everything. Not so Nora could simply survive, but so she could thrive. So she could reclaim what was stolen and build something better from the ruins. The Moonblessed had returned, and under Nora's leadership, they would create a legacy of healing and justice that would endure for generations to come. As the ceremony concluded and celebrations began, Matthias pulled Nora close and kissed her forehead. "How does it feel, Your Majesty? To finally be home?" Nora smiled up at him, her eyes bright with tears of joy rather than grief. "Like I am exactly where I am supposed to be. Like everything, even the pain and fear and years of hiding, led me here to this moment, to you, to us, to this future we are going to build. Together. Together," Matthias agreed. And as moonlight bathed them both in silver, as their bond glowed bright enough for everyone to see, they began the next chapter of their story. Not with fear or doubt, but with hope and love, and the unshakable certainty that they could face whatever came next. Together, they were unstoppable. Together, they would honor the past while creating a future worth believing in. The Moonblessed had risen again, and this time, they would never fall.